Chapter 5, Section 2, Confucius and His Teachings. Please make sure to have your Google Doc open, which is your guided reading questions, through the Google Classroom, and make sure to submit when you have completed watching this video and filled in the answers that accompany it on the guided reading. Suggestions would be to, when you come across an answer through the video, pause the video and fill in that answer and then resume the video. So, Confucius and his teachings. Why should you do your homework? How should you act towards other people? Must you always obey your parents? Must you always respect the President of the United States? How would you answer all these questions? Early Chinese thinkers asked themselves similar questions in an effort to establish a system of rules for their society. Questions to think about through this section. What values did Confucianism stress? And how did Confucius' ideas help shape Chinese society? Key terms and people that will be defined for you through the Google Classroom and you will encounter in this video. Philosophy, civil service, and finally our key person is Confucius. One day, the teacher Confucius and his students were walking through the countryside. In the distance, they heard a woman crying. As they came around the bend in the road, they saw the woman kneeling at a grave. "Why are you crying?" they asked her. "Because," she answered, "a tiger killed my husband's father. Later, that same tiger also killed my husband. Now, the tiger has killed my son as well." They then asked the woman, "Why do you stay in this place after these terrible things have happened?" The woman answered, "Because there are no cruel rulers here." Confucius turned to his students and said, "Remember this, a cruel ruler is fiercer and more feared than a tiger." The life of Confucius. Confucius was the most famous and important of the early Chinese thinkers. The Chinese, who regarded Confucius as a great teacher, called him Kang Fu Zu, or Master Kang. Confucius is the Western version of this name. After his death, Confucius' followers told many stories about him. Most of them were like the story of the woman and the tiger. Confucius was born in 551 BC to a noble but poor family of the North China Plain. When he was 3 years old, his father died. His mother raised him alone. He loved learning and was largely self-taught. Confucius hoped to advance to an important government office, but he never did. Instead, Confucius decided to try teaching. He charged students a fee to take classes. Many historians think that he was China's first professional teacher. Confucius taught his students his views of life and government. Some of his students went on to hold important government posts. In Confucius' time, only the rich could afford an education. But Confucius also accepted students who truly wanted to learn, even if they were poor. As he noted, "From the very poorest upward, none has ever come to me without receiving instruction. I instruct only a student who bursts with eagerness. Only one who bubbles with excitement do I enlighten." Later in his life, Confucius wandered about North China. He looked for a ruler who would follow his teachings, but was unsuccessful. Confucius returned home a disappointed man. He died in 479 BCE at the age of 72. By the time of his death, he believed his life had been a failure. He was wrong. The teachings of Confucius. Confucius did not claim to be an original thinker. He felt that his role was to pass on the forgotten teachings of wise people from an earlier age. Many of his teachings focused on persuading rulers to reform. He also aimed to bring peace, stability, and prosperity to their kingdoms. Confucius himself never wrote down his teachings. Instead, his students gathered a collection of his sayings after his death. Together, these writings made up a philosophy or system of beliefs and values. It came to be known as Confucianism. Confucianism was one of the several important philosophies of ancient China. Over time, it began to guide many aspects of life there. Confucius lived in a period known as the Time of Warring States. Powerful rulers of several Chinese states or kingdoms fought each other for the control of land. They seemed more interested in getting power than in ruling wisely. Confucius hoped to persuade these rulers to change their ways and to bring peace to China. Confucius's goal was order in society. He believed that if people could be taught to behave properly to one another, order and peace would return, and society would prosper. Confucius said that people should know their place in the family and society. They should respect people above and below them. Everyone must treat each other justly. He described people in various relationships: ruler and ruled, father and son, husband and wife, older brother and younger brother, friend and friend. Then he explained how they should behave. Confucius said, people in authority, princes or parents, must set a good example. If a ruler was good, his people would follow his example and become good. Confucius summarized his ideas about relationships in a simple sentence. It is similar to what Christians and Jews call the Golden Rule. He said, "Do not do to others what you would not want done to yourself." The impact of Confucius. Confucius's teachings had a major impact on Chinese government. They became the basic training for members of the civil service. The civil service is the group of people who carry out the work of government. Before Confucius's ideas took hold, government posts were generally given to the sons of important people. Afterward, any male could hold a government post on merit, that is, how well he did his job. People who receive a reward on merit have shown, in some way, that they deserve that reward. Candidates for government jobs had to pass official examinations. To advance, they had to pass more exams. These exams were based on Confucius's teachings. The examination system did bring more able young men into government service. However, it did not open government jobs to everyone. Candidates still had to know how to read. This made it difficult for a poor man to advance. But it was not impossible. Many talented but poor young men rose to high government positions. Confucius would have been surprised at the impact he had on China. He did not consider himself particularly wise or good. In fact, he felt that he was a failure. But Confucius left his mark on Chinese life as perhaps no one before or ever after has. This is the end of Chapter 5, Section 2. There are a few questions you should be able to respond to and answer on top of the guided reading through the Google Doc you should submit through the Google Classroom. These questions are: how did Confucius's teachings change the way civil servants were chosen in ancient China? And what are some basic ideas of Confucianism? Finally, what do you think Confucius would say about the government in the United States today? Would he feel that it followed his ideas? Why or why not? Once again, make sure to complete your guided reading and submit it through the Google Doc, through the Google Classroom, and we'll see you in class tomorrow. Remember, be excellent to one another.